The Koven hegemony never believed the tales about beings conquering the galaxy with their own minds, until the destroyer arrives in their home system. Captain Sarah Chen's ship, the UES Defiance, engages 200 Koven warships using only antiquated human tech and a heaping load of pure spite. With improvised weapons, ramming speed, and an overload of the reactor to form a pseudo-black hole, she picks apart their supposedly invincible armada. The handful of survivors doled the story out. Across the stars, the humans don't fight impossible odds with surprise and precision. They laugh and laugh and laugh. It takes about 1 month for the Koven Empire to crumble as news of impending human revenge spreads faster than their orders to retreat. Admiral Zethkar surveyed the assembled fleet from the bridge of the Koven flagship Eternal Dominion, for arms held folded behind his back. 200 of the hegemony's best ships of war extended into the void, their hulls glinting like obsidian knives against the stone. On the bow of each Laturian ship flew the crimson device of the Koven Empire, a sigil that had terrorized 1,000 worlds in 3 galactic sectors. Report, Zethkar barked. That voice of his that had broken rebellions and destroyed entire empires had returned. All ships report. Ready, Admiral, answered his tactical officer, a younger Koven whose mandibles clicked in nervousness. The border colonies have been brought to heel. The Zelanti surrender was ... complete. The compound eyes of Zethkar sparkled with joy. The Zelanti had been a right fucking nuisance, with their crystal cities. So pretty, so strategically useful. Now those cities were ashes, their people scattered to the solar winds. It was just the way of life. It was the strong eating the weak, as it had always been. And then there are the human myths, Zethkar said, as if the thought had just occurred to him. Are the white governor still telling all those silly nonsense tales? The tactical officer's mandibles snapped more rapidly. Admiral, some of the species we have conquered still refer to them. They claim humans are ... real, and that they will come to free the slaves. One could almost hear laughter rattle through the gangway of the bridge. That is, if Korvans had that kind of laughter. It did not. Rather, it was a savage grinding of mandibles that conveyed glee commingled with scorn. Human, Zethkar said again, rolling it on his tongue like a sour wine. The galaxy's greatest fairy tale. Share with me, officer, what these myths suggest about these mythic warriors. The reports vary, Admiral, but several things seem to have in common impossible resolve, Admiral. Ships that battle well beyond the intersection of the one that you know and the one that just exploded. Crews who don't give up with a death so clearly in waiting. They say that when humans fight, they don't just fight, they fight with a madness that is edge of insanity. Insanity, Zethkar mused. Or maybe that's why not a single shred of evidence has ever been found for such things. No home world, no colonies, no vessels. Just tales the defeated tell themselves before they die. The tactical officer nodded eagerly. Exactly, Admiral. As per our xenobiologists, humans are probably a mongrel myth put together out of warrior species with the most exaggerated traits. Not even one race can have such opposing attributes. Zethkar wheeled to face the viewport, observing the patrols of his fleet. For 800 years, the Koven hegemony had held sway over this sector, pushing the boundaries with precision. By the previous season, they'd met 47 species in total, had defeated 39 of them one way or another, and fused with all they could. The other 8 had been dismissed as evolutionarily defective. Admiral, the communications officer interjected, a report from long range out on the perimeter. Ship designation ... unknown. Unknown. The communications station. Zethkar's head turned to look at it. That's impossible. Ours can sense all the types of vessels even known within a kilolight year. The signature is unusual, Admiral. By the look of things, it's broadcasting on everything at once. Put it through. The bridge loudspeakers hissed to life, and the voice was enough to make every Koven in the room stop in their tracks. It was a voice, yet not like any voice they had ever heard. If Koven words were tight and precise, this one was barely fastened at all. It was casual. Of all other species they'd met who spoke like food, approaching predators, this one had a hint of ... amusement. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Defiance calling the Koven task force in the Arcturus system. You want it. You take it as many times as you can get it. You are instructed to take it back and remove yourself from all foreign space. The bridge was silent, save for the soft hum of the life support systems. Something in Zethkar's insect-like, compound eyes widened as his brain absorbed the sound. The casual tone, the impossible demand, the name, human, he whispered. I repeat, the voice said again, now distinctly female. and with a bit of laughing that must have been suppressed. "This is Captain Sarah Chen. You've got about a minute until I show you why humans aren't myths." Zethkar bared his mandibles in the ancient sign of dominance of an unknown species. "Impossible. There are no humans. This is some twisted ploy by Zelanti survivors, or the Vorthan resistance, or something." Admiral, the censor officer's voice choked with disbelief. "I'm reading one ship 1,000,000 kilometers off our starboard bow configuration, ... unknown. Lifter massa from 800,000 tons. 800,000 tons, Zethkar's amusement returned. Our lightest frigate weighs to millions of tons. Show me this human ship." The primary view screen changed to a closer image of the approaching ship. And what they discovered was in contravention of any law of Koven military engineering they had learned. The ship was blocky where Koven designs were flowing, brutish where theirs were refined. Someone had taken a knife to a block of metal and carved it, perverted everything that wasn't strictly essential. "That isn't a warship," said the tactical officer. "It's barely a courier vessel. Admiral, this has to be a suicide mission of some kind. Possibly the other Zelanti hired soldiers as a last act." 30 seconds, it was Captain Chen speaking, and there was definitely laughter in it now. "You know, I've got to say, your ships are beautiful, really impressive. So now my weapons officer's doing the math on how many of them we'll knock down before our power plant goes Leoyites out. Her current estimate is ... optimistic." Zethkar found himself genuinely curious. In 8 centuries of conquest, no race had ever swaggered up to the Koven fleet like words were enough to keep them from being vaporized. Even the most zealous warrior races had yet moved to bow to the mighty Koven in their dying breath. "Open a channel," he commanded. "Channel open, Admiral." "Admiral Zethkar of the Koven hegemony. I am speaking to whom?" "Captain Sarah Chen," I said. "But my friends, they call me Sarah." "You can ride with Captain Chen." "Captain Chen, I'm puzzled about your tactics. My sensors tell me you have one ship of 200. Primitive. Are you retarded or something?" The laughter, filtering out of the speakers, was of the warm, genuine variety. The sort of sound you'd expect from shared jokes and casual camaraderie. It was so alien to the Koven ear that several bridge officers took a step back on instinct. "Admiral, I understand your concern, but my cognitive processes are functioning properly. I'm just doing my job. Your job, protecting the innocent, stopping tyrants. The usual human stuff." "There are no men," Zethkar replied bluntly. "You are living out a very complicated lie." "Well, that's bad loot for you, isn't it? If there are no humans, what am I?" It was a question on the air, as if it were a challenge. For a moment Zethkar was silenced, an occurrence so unusual that his lesser cerebral chambers requested. "Maintenance diagnosis, time's up," Captain Chen announced with a big smile. "Fair warning, Admiral. You can also try putting your flagship all the way in the back for the formation. This is where things are going to get hot." "Interesting." The force of Zethkar's authority resounded in his voice. "Captain, I'm going to give you one chance to back down. Your vessel will be poked and prodded, your crew discredited, and your species filed among the extinct." "That is the generosity of the Koven hegemony," counteroffer Chen replied. "You pull back from all the occupied territory and prisoners are released and you go back to your area. For this, most of your fleet will survive. What's next?" "Most of my fleet," Zethkar's amusement returned. "Captain, you're up against one primitive ship against 200 starships. Maybe you need to retry your math, Admiral. You are functioning under a false assumption that our mathematics are the same as your mathematics. You see, when we do the math, we're not just counting ships and weapons and armor. We account for determination, creativity, and flat-out stubborn refusal to quit. By human calculation, I'd say they are 50-50 even." It was the last word as if it were cruelly dragged from a rough rasp. "Maybe slightly in your favor. My bonehead engineer is still pessimistic about how much our reactor will produce." Zethkar commanded as he motioned to his tactical officer. "Weapons range. The human vessel is still beyond the best firing confines, Admiral, till I command the fleet to advance." "No," Zethkar said slowly. "I'm actually curious about the delusions this thing has. Let it approach. As soon as it gets in range, we'll burn it off the face, and the interrogation of its crew will provide fascinating data about the psychology of a dead species." "Admiral," the com officer interjected, "the human vessel is gaining speed. Velocity now." "Admiral, there's no way these readings are correct." "What velocity?" 0.75 light speed and accelerating. "Admiral, our fastest ships can make 0.6 lights for an hour at a time." Zethkar's confidence wavered slightly. "Sensor malfunction. Running diagnostics now. Admiral, all systems show green." The human ship is. Admiral, it is laughing. Ships don't laugh. No, Admiral. The human captain is laughing. The channel is still open. There was laughter and gay laughter everywhere on the bridge. It was laughter from a man who had just heard a good joke, or a man who was anticipating playing a great joke on his friends, who had come with him. Sorry, Captain Chen's voice spoke distinctly. I was just thinking about something my grandma used to say. If you're going to be in a fight, be in a fight. Words to live by. Your grandmother was a warrior. Zethkar found himself asking Baker, actually, but she survived the siege of New Geneva, was still making bread during the orbital bombardment. Finally, those enemy troops broke through the shields, and she met them at the door with a rolling pin and a bad attitude. And she smashed 3 knights in armor into insensibility with a kitchen utensil. Weird how we humans protect what we love. The TAC officer's mandibles clattered together rapidly. Admiral, the human vessel has shifted course. It's aiming right at our middle formation. How long until weapons range? At our current speed, 14 minutes. Admiral Zethkar considered his options. The smart play is to disperse the fleet, make the human ship choose targets, and then gang up and destroy it. But curiosity was stronger than caution with him. When would he get another chance to research a mythical creature? All ships maintain formation. I want to know this human's plan. Admiral, the sensor officer shouted. The human vessel is broadcasting on the wideband again. Put it through. Fleet of Koven's attention. Captain Chen's tone had taken on a more formal edge. This is your final warning. Turn back. Against face the consequences. We'd very much rather not have to do this in hard mode. Captain Chen, Zethkar answered. I must admit that your tactics are confusing to me. I think you're trying to scare an overwhelmingly stronger entity with what? Psychological warfare, bluffing, not intimidation. Admiral, professional, courtesy. In 12 minutes I'm going to begin shooting. That's right. It's a question and answer site, and I am tasked specifically with making sure the people who make the wrong choices in life have a chance to set things right according to the rules. Standard human protocol. We are very big on informed consent. Even our enemies deserve to hear what they're signing up for. The bridge crew exchanged glances. This was not the way your average pre-battle communication went down, with few exceptions. The main species either pleaded for mercy or threatened all off to incession. The human captain had presided over their demise as if it were just another bureaucratic formality. Captain Zethkar ventured carefully. Perhaps you could acquaint me with this protocol. What are you telling us? Well, Admiral, here's the thing about humans. We are not very strong compared with most species. We're not that fast. We have no natural weapons, and compared to what we've seen out here, our technology is actually not that advanced. But this is our idiosyncrasy that makes us different, which is, we are absolutely terrible at telling when we are beaten, like catastrophically bad at it. Other relatives appraise the same overwhelming odds, and are reasonable. Men see a daunting long shot and say, hey, you know what? Fun. When the last time Tato faced impossible odds, we invented 17 new weapon systems, discovered 3 new laws of physics, and accidentally created a small artificial star. Was a Tuesday. Zethkar's second clusters were full speed now as he attempted to grasp the implications of what he was hearing. You're saying your people think of war as entertainment. Not entertainment, Admiral, more like ... extreme problem solving. When we see a situation like this, it prompts us to ask interesting questions. What if we blow out our reactor, just when I'm about to ram your flagship? Or, how about wielding our communications array as a directed energy weapon? Or how about we just shoot at everything and see what gives first? That's no strategy, Zethkar remarked sternly. Those are what you do when an animal is cornered. Admiral, you're reasoning like a Koven, methodical, logical, efficient. Humans don't think like that. We're thinking more like humans. We see all these rules and we want to break them. We face limits and we want to overcome them. We're into impossible and we think of challenges as personal. 10 min until weapons are in range, the tactical officer said. Captain Chen, Zethkar ventured one last rational argument. I'll grant your ship is faster than expected, and your psychological attacks creative, but you are one ship and there are 200. Mathematics remains mathematics. Admiral, I have something to say about human mathematics. 3 centuries gone, an entire berserker fleet was confronted by one human vessel. The berserkers were machines. Admiral, no fear, no pain, no reluctance. 17 star systems worth of perfect killing machines. And you know what that human captain, he did? I cannot imagine. She deliberately crashed the lead berserker ship at 95% light velocity, chanting Batch's ode to joy on all channels. The explosion caused a chain reaction and led to the rest of the fleet's destruction. The last message her ship sent was laughter. That's impossible. The berserkers thought so too. And then, until they didn't, Zethkar's confidence faltered at the casual conviction in the human's tone. And even if it were possible, it would be suicide. Admiral, you're beginning to sound like a Koven. Humans do not see death as an ending, we see it as a transition. The issue isn't whether we'll die, but how we'll die. And dying as you saved the innocent, literally is about all you can make it sound as good as it is. 8 minutes to weapons range. Only, here's the thing, Admiral, Captain Chen went on, and the tone of her voice had changed, somehow, slightly. Was she, ... I'm not going to die today. See, dying is easy. Anyone can die, living through impossible odds that takes skill. Captain, if I may, is there any chance you are drunk? The laughter was so natural, so full of amusement that it was impossible not to respond in kind. Koven bridge crew, however crusty, becoming briefly undone. Admiral, I have not drank for 6 months, I'm just naturally like this. It's a human thing. 6 minutes to weapons range. All hands, Zethkar ordered, brace for battle. Aim at the human ship, as soon as it's in the best firing range. Admiral called the sensor officer. The human ship appears to be preparing to define something. It's spinning. Admiral flipping end over end. No course or speed changes. Evasive maneuvers. No, Admiral, it seems. I think humans call it showboating, of course. The Defiance was performing some stupid rolls and looping routines that had no tactical value. It was almost as if the ship was doing some sort of intricate square dance for the Koven fleet's amusement. 5 minutes to weapons range. Captain Chen, Zethkar asked slowly. What is your ship doing? Oh, that's my pilot, Chen said chippily. Marcus has 3 months in this tin can. He's just burning off some steam. No fear, he'll calm down once the shooting begins. Your pilot's name is Marcus. Marcus Pet, Russian-American, formerly atmospheric echelon champion, completely mad. An ideal candidate for military pilot. 4 minutes to weapons range. Admiral, the tactical officer asked, do I give the order for the fleet to disperse? Targeting calculations are being hindered by the unpredictable movement patterns of the human ship. Zethkar considered this. A spread-out formation would be tactically better, though it would deprive him of a chance to observe human tactics. Maintain formation. Ships, stand ready to open fire as soon as their human enters range. Admiral, came Captain Ch. Voice over the speakers, just in case. You know, I don't remember saying we intended to enter your weapons range. Then how do you plan to keep my ships occupied? Well, that's the interesting part. You see, human weapons don't function the same way everyone else's weapons do. The vast majority of species would create weapons for accuracy, efficacy, and maximum impact with minimal energy spent. People build weapons for, well, for fun. Fun. Admiral, 3 minutes to weapons range. Some of the questions we ask ourselves are, what would happen if we duct taped a nuclear reactor to a mass driver? Or what if we were to make our shields transform into a focusing lens for our main gun? Or can we weaponize our garbage disposal? Your garbage disposal? It's a long story. The fact is, human weapons are conceived by individuals who find conventional tactics uninspired. We prefer the creative approach. 2 minutes to weapons range. Squadron leader, the sensor officer shouted forward. I'm finishing build-ups of energy running through the human ship. There are several systems consuming power at once. Weapons charging, unknown. Admiral, the energy signatures do not appear to correspond to any known weapons systems. 1 minute to weapons range. Captain Chen Zethkar said, forgive me, but I must say on the subject of your methods I am curious. What arms will you direct against my fleet? Well, Admiral, we do have our big gun. A particle accelerator that we borrowed from a research station. We've got our missile tubes that right now have in them fusion warheads that we may have them adjusted a bit. And we've got our secret weapon, special weapon. Our satellite dish is also a DEW. Our shield generators can be reversed. To form a concentration of gravity, our navigational bumpers can serve as mass drivers, and our reactor overloads to generate a temporary artificial singularity. 30 seconds to weapons range. An artificial singularity, a teeny little black hole. Admiral, it's over in just seconds, but it can be very enjoyable for everyone involved. That's impossible. Human weapons envelope secured, announced the tactical officer. All ships, commence firing, Zethkar ordered. 200 Koven battlecruisers fired at once. The gap between the fleets became a blazing sea of energy beams. plasma bolts, and missile trails. It was an amount of firepower that in a good science fiction movie would have left a small planet as a pile of constituent atoms. The human ship vanished. Where did it go? Zethkar demanded. Unknown, Admiral. It simply ... disappeared. Ships don't disappear, Captain Chen. Zethkar shouted. Where are you? Here, Admiral, sir, came the happy response. Sorry about the vanishing act. Emergency jump drive. We stole the technology from a race I won't name. Impossible. Jump engines need huge power supplies and leaves a signature with dimensional passage. Yeah, about that. Humans do this thing where they cuss down things that are impossible just by their sheer bloody-mindedness. Also, we cheat a lot. Admiral, the sensor officer's voice rang out. The leveler ship is in our wake. Behind us, it's inside our formation. Admiral, range 0. The large screen display changed to show the human destroyer, sitting as still as an inanimate object in the very middle of the Koven ships. The flagship, however, was so close that one could see the stripes on its hull without a glass. Admiral, Captain Chen's voice echoed in the speakers. Nice ships you have here. Mind if I borrow them? Borrow them? I'm kidding. I'm about to blow them up, but I wanted to say hello first. It's polite. All vessels, Zethkar announced. Focus. Fire on the human ship. Maximum firepower. Sir, at this distance our weapons will kill our own ships, the tactical officer said. Then ram it. All ships, ramming speed. Admiral, Captain Chen cut in. I'd advise against that. If I were you, why not? Because I'm going to show you why we don't have the same notions of fair fights that you binary creatures do. The spasm of blue-white glaciation that now started to pulse visibly in the hull of the human ship hummed to its own beat. The light grew brighter and brighter, to the point it was now painful to look upon. What is that? Zethkar demanded. Our reactor getting ready to do something that my engineers once assured me was totally impossible. I treasure when they are wrong. Admiral, said the sensor officer as he yelled. I see the energy is gathering violently on all the human ships. Power readings are, Admiral, that can't be right. What readings? The human ship is outpowering our entire fleet combined. Impossible. Admiral, Captain Chen's voice sounded jubilant. You know when I once said humans don't know when to give up? Oh, and we're also terrible at observing safety protocols. We actually have our reactor running at 400% of its recommended capacity. That will destroy your ship, not unless we manage to misdirect the power. Thankfully, we have a pretty creative engineering team. The blue-white spark flared brighter, and the human craft started to spin around its own center. But this was not the playful aerobatics of before. It was a mediated rotation that was stretched, tight, and produced a clear local distortion of the space around it. What are you doing? Zethkar asked. Building an artificial gravity well. Admiral, it's a standard human tactic. When you're outnumbered, change the rules of engagement. Admiral, announced the tactical officer. Our ships are being attracted towards the human ship. They are battling against their engines, but gravity is working against them. Increase power to engines, all ships, emergency burn. We're trying, Admiral. Somehow the human vessel is creating local gravity. The tactical officer was interrupted as the human ship's weapons began their thundering report. What happened next would be a battle unlike any known to Koven military history. The main cannon of the human ship didn't fire singular shots. Instead, it emitted a steady stream beam of coherent particles that blurred out over the Koven construction like a searchlight. Any ship it contacted simply vanished, evaporated so completely that not even fragments remained. Impossible, Zethkar whispered. Admiral. Captain Chen's voice issued from the speakers, but now she sounded slightly sad. If that was possible, I said that was a bad idea. The missile tubes of the human ship opened fire. These were not normal missiles. They were small and quick, and they seemed to be operating with the kind of intelligent, AI-based navigational systems beyond anything David had so far encountered. Like living serpents, they sashayed through the Koven's charging formation, each seeking their mark with unerring accuracy. How are they tracking us? The tactical officer demanded. Our stealth systems are active, Admiral. The sensory officer cried out. The human missiles are managing to bypass our stealth systems. They are going for our life support signature race. Life support signatures. They are tracking us by the heat signatures of our breathers. Admiral, they're chasing us as though we were animals. Zethkar stared in disbelief as his proud fleet was picked apart, ship by ship, by the lone human destroyer. The ships that had conquered worlds were being blasted to smithereens by weapons that should not exist, tactics that defied military logic. Admiral, Captain Chen's voice broke into his musing. I must make you understand something. This isn't personal. Your people have enslaved 47 races, decimated planets. You can't begin to imagine the horrors of. But this isn't about revenge. This is about justice. Justice. People have this strange belief that the strong should help the weak, rather than take advantage of them. We know it's irrational, but we can't help ourselves. Admiral, said the tactical officer, we are losing 60% of the fleet. Human vessel is still attacking in formation. Order all the ships we've got left to scatter. Full retreat. Admiral, there was real regret in Captain Chen's voice. I don't think I can let you do that. Why not? 'Cause then you'll just go fuck up some other species. And then we'll have to go through this all again. The human ship jerked into an even more rapid spin. The gravity scour around it deepening until Mike was aching from the intensity of it. The last of the Koven ships began to be dragged helplessly towards the human ship in a man-made gravitational pull they could not escape. What are you doing? Zethkar demanded. Something that will court-martial me if I live through it. Captain Chen answered. Admiral, I want you to know that it's not a happy occasion, but sometimes the only way to save the innocent is to destroy the enemy. Admiral called the engineering officer. The reactor of the human ship is going critical. Anything in our databases are off the chart in terms of energy levels. Can we escape? No, Admiral, this one's got too much gravity. We're locked in. Admiral, Captain Chen's voice burst out into the speakers one last time. I need you to remember something. Humans aren't myths. We are real. We are out here, and we are watching. When you opted to become monsters, you made us your foe, and people are really, really good at being enemies. The human ship's reactor is at critical. What came next would be the topic of fierce contention amongst the few surviving Koven scientists for generations to come. The reactor of the human ship didn't explode at all. Instead, it imploded on itself, taking its mass and forming a space with a black hole, the size of a small pebble, lasting just 17 seconds. Within those 17 seconds, the synthetic singularity annihilated 183 Koven warships, becoming nothing more than plumes of superhot plasma, coiling into the event horizon. When the black hole finally evaporated with an explosion of Hawking radiation, there were only 17 Koven ships left. They floated in space, their crews gazing helplessly at the void where their enormous fleet had been. Admiral, the comm officer hoarsely muttered. We're getting a message. From whom? The human ship. Admiral, it's still there, and as a matter of fact, the human destroyer still hung in space precisely where it had been. Its hull scored, blackened, but basically whole. Somehow, incredibly, it had endured the birth and death of an artificial black hole. Admiral, Captain Chen called in, and she sounded tired but pleased. I told you dying was easy. Living through impossible odds. That takes skill. How? Zethkar could hardly find his voice. Human engineering, Admiral. We build things to last. Plus, we really had a good engineering crew. I'm going to have to buy them all drinks when we get back. Admiral, the tactical officer said. The human vessel is coming off of weapons. Captain Chen, Zethkar asked slowly. What's next? Well, Admiral, the decision is yours. You could try and maintain your little empire, but I'll have to keep wiping your fleets out until you have no ships left. Or, if you prefer, you can go back home, let your prisoners go and get a new hobby. I'd recommend gardening. It's peaceful, and if we choose to fight, and you'll find you're not the only human ship out here when you do. We've been monitoring your species for some time, Admiral, taking notes, learning your tactics, preparing for this moment. How many ships? Enough, Admiral. More than enough. Zethkar surveyed the faces of the survivors on his bridge. Those had been the pride of the Koven military, old pros who had taken worlds and shattered empires. Now they looked at their instruments with the empty gaze of individuals who'd observed their entire view of the world smashed within an hour. Sir, the sensor officer said, the human vessel is retreating. Moving away. It's leaving the system. Admiral, current heading ... unknown. Captain Chen, Zethkar shouted. Where are you taking us? Home, Admiral. I have a report to file, and my men need shore leave. But we will return if you choose wrong. How will you know? We'll know. Admiral, we're always watching. The human vessel accelerated out of the system. The trail of its engines vanished into the background radiation of the universe. In seconds it was gone, vanished like it had never existed, and all that remained was the 17 surviving ships of the Koven and the wreckage that had once been proud ships of the hegemony. Admiral, the communications officer said in a low tone, we're getting reports from all over the sector. The news is spreading. What news? Humans are real. That's the news, Admiral. And that they have just wiped out most of our fleet with a single ship. Zethkar shut his eyes and held the heavy feeling of 800 years of Koven rule together for as long as he could. Regan, send a message to High Command. Let them know. Let them know we're coming home. What about the occupied territories? Release them, all of them. Immediately, Admiral. You heard me. Unconditionally release all prisoners, withdraw your occupation forces and return to Koven space. Emergency protocols. But Admiral, the High Command will expect explanations. Then, tell them the truth. Let them know that humanity exists, that they are more dangerous than we knew, and that we will all be destroyed if we keep spreading. The communications officer acknowledged it with a nod and got to work sending the withdrawal orders. Koven domains. The sector-wide reaction to this was Koven forces immediately creeping away from their conquests out of terror for a species of whom they had believed to be just a myth. The story was making its way through the galaxy within hours. Even the undisputed, immovable power of the Koven Empire had pulled back on all of their occupied worlds. The reason, a solitary human vessel had annihilated their armada. The news came to the enslaved species before he did. 1,000 worlds, beings whose entire existence had been spent beneath the boot of Koven oppression, looked at the sky and said the word that had become code for freedom, salvation even, human. The freed Zelanti reconstructed their crystal cities and added the tale of Captain Sarah Chen to their holy history. The Vorthan resistance forces coming out of hiding and beginning to form new governments. Throughout the galaxy, lifeforms that had been bracing themselves for extinction found themselves at liberty, but the biggest shift was in how the galaxy saw humans. They were treated seriously after that. They were real, they were out there, and they were watching. This was the story of the UES Defiance, and the story on which to build a new definition. Humans didn't just sinlessly fight the impossible, they won, and exactly as she had promised, Captain Sarah Chen reported into Earth Command. The bureaucrats, reading it, initially dismissed as fiction, then exaggeration, then as the most important intelligence document in human history. Within a month, the Sol system was a hive of activity, the world of humanity readying itself not for what was to come, but for the response that would follow their first official encounter with great and vast galactic civilization. But the response never came. Instead, messages had started coming in from all over the galaxy. Thank you notes from freed slaves, offers of alliance from enlightened species, and threats from the frightened survivors of former foes who had come to dread the very word human. The Koven Empire would survive for precisely 27 more days, and not due to military defeat, but by something even more crippling, the loss of their aura of invincibility. The species they had used out of fear rebelled. Allies abandoned them. Their own colonies declared independence. Admiral Zirkon spent his last days of command writing reports on human military capabilities in great detail, attempting to alert anyone who would take heed of the folly of underestimating a species that took impossible odds as a personal challenge to meet. His findings were archived and ignored as the Koven regime fell in ruin around him. The EO's Defiance made its triumphant return to Earth. But Captain Sarah Chen never mentioned the battle for public consumption. Pressed by reporters, she would say only that she had done her job and that her crew were the ones who deserved the real credit. The ship itself had been quietly put out to the pastures of a museum, where it was now a pilgrimage site for life forms from across the galaxy who wanted to see the ship that changed everything. The pilot who had done those fancy, complicated aerobatics before the battle, Marcus Petrov, turned into a minor celebrity. He passed away at retirement in teaching at the academy, where his favorite lesson always began with the same line: flying is more than just going from here to there, and most of the time, it's about showing off for the camera. The engineer who had somehow modified the reactor when it shouldn't have been possible was promoted to head of the Human Engineering Corps, and spent her days trying to figure out new ways to make technology do stuff it wasn't built to do. Her mantra turned into unofficial policy: if it's meant to be impossible, we'll figure out a way to make it work. But the most dramatic change may have come in human military doctrine. The Battle of Arcturus demonstrated that mankind's greatest weapon was not one of technology or sheer numbers. It was the sheer refusal to be beaten, joined with an ingenuity that made limits an opportunity. The galaxy came to know fear of humans, not of their strength, or their speed, or their technology. They learned to be afraid of humans because when things looked hopeless, humans still didn't give up. They got creative, they got angry, and they got results. The legend of the UES Defiance became larger with every version of it told throughout the galaxy. Some iterations held that the ship had sunk 1,000 enemy vessels. Others said Captain Chen had single-handedly stopped the war with her bare hands. The reality was far more straightforward and far more complicated. Humans had turned out to be exactly what the myths said they were. They were the ones who had no sense when it was time to surrender. They were warriors who literally laughed in the face of death. They were guardians who'd traded all to protect the innocent. They were no illusions. They were no dreaming. They were watching, and whatever they were all the galaxy had hoped for and dreaded. The Koven Empire no longer existed, but its legacy persisted in how the galaxy came to know itself as human. They were not myths or legends or amalgam characters derived from the desperate dreams of the oppressed. They were true, and they were just as deadly as the stories would have it them be. 3 months after the battle, Captain Sarah Chen was back. In her small apartment on Lunar Colony, she had come home for peace, and found herself looking down at the world she'd grown up on, thinking about the 17 Koven ships that had made it away. 17 ships of survivors who would carry the tale back out across the galaxy. 17 spectators to humanity's first formal meeting with the people of the galaxy. It was Admiral Rebecca Torres, the woman who'd assigned her the mission that had begun it all. Kessen Strut 3 Jan Meklapai Fac, EAOXW equals congratulations. Captain Torres replied, sinking into the comfortable armchair by the window. Put humanity in the position of the most feared species in the galaxy. That was not the game plan, Chen said, pouring coffee from a pot that could have been shiny decades earlier. The goal was to free the Zelanti, and perhaps bloody the Koven fleet's nose. I had never meant to tear down their entire empire. Intentions aren't often asked in war, Sarah. Results do, and the figures speak for themselves. 47 species have been liberated. The Koven Empire has collapsed. The 3 major trade routes have reopened. Measured by any standard, your mission was an astounding success. Chen leaned back in her chair and sipped her coffee as a transport shuttle docked with the lunar orbital station. So why do I feel like I initiated something that we're not ready to finish? You're thinking like a human, Torres said with a half-smile. You're already 3 steps down the line thinking about things that may never happen. It's the reason we are good at this. The 12th of March 1998, Admiral. I just created a black hole in an inhabited solar system. Do you have any clue how close I was to accidentally destroying 3 inhabited planets? We double-checked and triple-checked our numbers. Sarah, the risk was minimal. Minimal isn't 0. And the precedent, Chen slammed down her coffee cup a little too hard. We just told the galaxy that humans are willing to make weapons using every species out there is now wondering what else we can do. Good, Torres said firmly. Let them wonder, let them fear. Fear enforces peace, better than treaties ever could. Does it, or does it merely make the next war inevitable? Chen's communication device beeped and he had to slap the edge of his helmet to click it on. Before Torres could say anything, Chen received an incoming transmission. A tall, stately figure with faceted features suddenly filled the room between them as she activated the holo-display. Captain Chen, the being spoke, its voice layered with harmonics that made the air seem to sing. I am Ambassador Kralthara of the Zelanti Collective. For my people, we can never forget the deeds you performed at Arcturus. Chen nodded politely. Ambassador, it was our privilege to help your people. So how is the mass looting going on the reconstruction efforts? Better than we hoped even. Captain, the Kovens had withdrawn so fully that they had abandoned the bulk of their infrastructure. We're taking their military installations and turning them into schools and hospitals. Their armories are becoming museums and galleries. I'm glad to hear it. Captain, there is something else I want to talk to you about. The Council of the Galaxy has been re-established, and we are here to invite you to be a founding member among them. Chen glanced toward her mentor, Admiral Torres. Ambassador, I'm honored, but I do not have authority of diplomatic nature. Of course, Captain, except your performance at Arcturus made you something of a star in that respect. Every one of the species thinks the human representative to the Council should be the one who freed them from the attrition of Koven domination. I'm a ship captain, not a diplomat. Captain Chen, the shimmering face of the ambassador adapted itself into what may have been a smile. We of all people should know that the best diplomats are those who want the job the least. Soldiers who battle for right, not renown. Defenders of life rather than defenders of power. After the ambassador said goodbye, Chen looked at Torres. Please, tell me you're not even thinking about this. I'm considering it, Torres admitted. Sarah, ready or not, you are the human face to the galaxy. Your name carries weight. Your word is trusted. Politicians and diplomats for decades tried to create that kind of reputation, and I got it by breaking stuff. You got it by defending the innocent. There's a difference. Chen turned back to the window and the constant flutter of traffic moving between Earth and Luna. Admiral, what can you tell us about the survivors from Koven? Intelligence indicates they are distributed throughout the galaxy. Some have returned to their home planet, others have gone underground, some have apparently joined mercenary groups or criminal gangs. And what about those who saw the fight? Torres kept silent for a long moment. That's more complicated. We believe that watching their fleet get wiped out has dealt a devastating blow to their psychological health. Koven society is predicated on military superiority. To have that superiority shattered by one human ship has led to nothing short of a species-wide existential crisis. Meaning, because some of them are trying to figure out how we did it. They're learning about human strategies, human psychology, human technologies. They want to learn what makes us unique. And the others believe that humankind is therefore an existential threat to all life in the galaxy. They are attempting to form a coalition to destroy us before we can expand beyond the Sol system. And Chen felt a chill that had nothing to do with the lunar night. Admiral, how many ships do we have? 17 vessels was the count, among them the Defiance, another 34 under construction. The Senate has passed emergency funding for rapid fleet growth. But it will take years to build sufficient ships to protect our interests. And how many ships do our potential enemies possess? I'd say no fewer than 10,000 active warships from species for which Homo sapiens would be a threat, if they unite against us. And then we're back to fighting insurmountable odds. Double quotes, yes. But as you've also demonstrated, humans are scarily good at that. Chen's communication unit chimed again. This time, the call was from unknown. Captain Chen. It was obviously a Koven, yet none of the insolence of Admiral Zethkar was in the sensual voice. I am Adelher asked. I fought in the Battle of Arcturus, Commander. My ship was the cruiser, Crimson Talon. My ship was one of 17 which escaped your... show. I remember. Is there something I can do for you, Commander? I have to talk to you, Captain. To discuss the future. I don't know what to say here, Captain. The loss of our fleet had implications far beyond the fall of the Koven Empire. What you've done is create a void that is being filled by powers that are much worse than anything we did. Chen felt her stomach tighten. Explain. The Koven Empire ruled with fear and intimidation. Yes, it did. But it also maintained order. Sure, we conquered worlds, but we also defended them from something that would have completely consumed them. Our fleet that used to be destroyed. Those protections are gone. What kind of things are you familiar with the Devourers, Captain Chen? The name sent a hush through the room. Even Admiral Torres sat up in her chair. I've heard the anecdotes, Chen said, carefully. Machines that eat entire star systems, but they are myths like humans were. They are not myths, Captain, they are sleeping. Then, the imprint of your own artificial singularity roused them from their slumber. The silence crawled on for a few more seconds before Chen was able to form a response. How do you know this? Because we picked up a huge energy spike coming from the Void sector 3 days ago. The last Devourer fleet was observed in the exact same sector, 2,000 years ago. Our scientists theorized that the gravitational disturbance you caused set up a resonance signature in subspace that activated their automated awakening protocols. That's impossible. As is the loss of our armada to one ship, sir, yet here we are. Torres leaned forward. Commander, just what the hell are you suggesting? An alliance? Admiral, Koven battlefield tactics suddenly combined with good old human innovativity. The Devourers eat everything in their way. They do not talk, they do not give breaks, and they do not quit. Now that they are finally waking up, we must all the different species in the galaxy work together to survive. And why would you even trust you? Chen asked. Captain, we've all seen what happens with properly motivated humans, after all. If Devourers come and threaten the innocent, then humankind will make war upon them. And if humanity is going to battle them, then we want to be on your side. Chen glanced over at Torres, who gave a small nod. Commander, I'm going to need some evidence for these accusations before we can even think of an alliance. Of course, Captain, I'm relaying sensory data from our deep space monitors. You will find it, illuminating. A few minutes later, the data package arrived. Chen accepted it on her hala, and her blood ran cold. The sensors had detected huge energy signatures traversing the empty space between galaxies, on a direct path toward inhabited space. Admiral, Chen said with a quiet voice, how long before we can issue a recall for every human ship to return to the Sol system? 2 days for the full recall. Why? Since, according to this data, we have about half a year until the first Devourer scouts would make contact with the border colonies. Torres stood up abruptly. I need to get hold of the fleet command right away. Wait, Chen said. If we do accept this alliance, Commander Vextor, what have we, the surviving Koven, to contribute? Tactical data on Devourer capabilities, Captain. A battle plan that has survived across 2,000 years. And of course, the whereabouts of the Forge Worlds. Forge Worlds, abandoned auto shipyards created by the previous race to have been consumed by the They were built to crank out warships faster than any biological race could achieve, if they still function. We can create a fleet that is appropriate to combat the Devourers, Chen concluded. Perhaps, but Captain, there's one more thing. You need to know. The Forge Worlds had been programmed to answer only to those who had fought and triumphed above impossible odds. For the weak or the cowardly, it will not turn on. They'll activate for humans. Yes, Captain, they will activate. For humans. Chen brought up the data file and then looked to Torres. Admiral, I have a question to ask you, and I need you to be perfectly honest with me, of course. Are we ready for this? Are we truly prepared to police the galaxy? Torres was silent for a long time, looking out at the Earth. 30 years in the army, Sarah, I have seen humanity at its best and its worst. I have seen us pull off the impossible, and I have seen us fail catastrophically at some of the things that should be simplest. But I've never seen us step back on the basis of innocent lives. That's not an answer. Yes, it is. It is the only response that counts. We're not ready, we'll never be ready. But they, or we, will do it anyway, because that's what people do. We imagine impossible odds and we take them personally. Chen nodded slowly. Commander Vextor, you have my answer. But I have conditions. Name them, Captain. Number 1. We will evaluate all former Koven forces for psychological evaluation and ongoing issues. Second, any alliance is conditional upon the full freedom of all other Kovens and dissolution of all slave labor camps. Third of all, when we find out that this is some elaborate ambush, the Battle of Arcturus will look like a minor skirmish. Understood. Captain, all conditions are acceptable. Then we have an alliance. Admiral Torres is the man in charge of military matters. I'll handle the diplomatic side. Captain, Vextor interjected, there is one more thing. The Galactic Council meets in emergency session to consider the threat of the Devourer. What they have asked for is a person from mankind to be sent, and they asked that you represent them, Captain Chen. Chen closed her eyes and massaged her temples. Of course they have. The session itself is scheduled to meet at the Nexus station 1 week from now. Captain, the survival of the galaxy may very well depend on your capacity to gather the species together and fight for their lives. At no pressure, Chen muttered. When the call was over, Torres looked over at Chen with a sympathetic expression. You know, Sarah, when I sent you to save the Zelanti, I never ever envisioned this to what galactic war, diplomatic responsibility, or only that this may all represent a fundamental rearrangement of humanity's place in the universe. To you being the most important person in the galaxy. Chen laughed, but it was not laughter. Admiral, 3 months ago I was a ship captain with 200 men. I'm now evidently the envoy of humanity to the galaxy and our military coordinator, and our chief diplomat. How did this happen? You won an unwinnable fight, Sarah. You proved we are exactly what the myths said we are, and now everyone's waiting for you to pull it off again. What if I can't? Then we'll find another way. That's what humans do. For a week after Chen was busy preparing for the Galaxy Council session, she read all she could get out of files on Devourer capabilities, the tactical analyses of the last war, the names and political roles of all the species expected to attend, but it did nothing to prepare her for the truth of the Nexus station. It was hardly surprising that the station was a marvel of cooperative engineering, constructed by no fewer than 17 species over the past 300 years. It floated, empty between the galaxies, and no race had any dominion on it. The docking bay in which the UES Defiance was greeted was designed to facilitate ships built by civilizations that constructed their ships on completely different scales. Captain Chen strolled down hallways filled with delegates from throughout the galaxy. She witnessed crystalline forms that sang in the act of walking, and beings dwelling within gas giants, wearing suits of metal serving as mechanical support, energy creatures that were patterns of light. Each species she passed froze, in the act of doing whatever it was they were doing, to watch her walk by. Captain Chen, interjected a voice behind her. She looked up to find a being she didn't recognize, tall and splendid with skin of silver and eyes like stars. I am Thorn, ambassador for the Ethereal Collective. I thought it only fair. I come and see you, and thank you for what you did at Arcturus, ambassador. It was our duty. perhaps, but duty and capacity are two different things. You brought hope to the galaxy, Captain. For other species, that was the first hope they'd felt in centuries, and now we are asking them to hope again. Only now from an even greater threat. Yes. Except they know humans are real this time. They realize that impossible odds can be defeated. That knowledge will be all the difference. The council chamber was enormous. The seats were arranged in circle upon circle, centered around a platform used for speaking. Chen sat down in the human delegation's designated space and surveyed the gathered representatives. There were familiar faces from intelligence briefings, species she had only heard stories about, and individuals so alien, her mind had trouble wrapping around their appearance. The Galactic Council emergency session will now commence, declared the speaker, a creature of unknown identity to Chen. We are here to account for the threat that has been awakened by the Devourer, Armada. The next few hours were a whirl of speeches, arguments and debates. One by one species arose to express their fears, their protests, and their strategies. Others demanded that the outer colonies be evacuated as soon as possible. Some suggested fleeing into deep space until the Devourers moved on. A few suggested surrender. Lastly, the speaker beckoned humanity's ambassador to speak before the council. Chen rose to her feet, aware of the presence of 10,000 eyes. She went to the central platform and gazed at the gathered delegates, members of the Galactic Council. She began, her voice booming loud and clear even through the chamber's own acoustics. I do not address you as a conqueror nor a politician, but a protector. My vessel met the Koven fleet in the Arcturus system 3 months ago. We were outnumbered 200 to 1. By all reasoning, it should have taken us out within minutes. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. But we weren't destroyed. We fought, and we won. Not because we were more powerful or more progressive, but because we rejected the face of defeat. Now we are faced with odds that make the Battle of Arcturus look like a warm-up. The Devourers are on their way, and they bring with them the threat of extinction to all life in our corner of the galaxy. The chamber fell silent. I can go on to say that humanity will battle this threat. I can tell you that our ships and our weapons and our tactics will suffice to save us all. But that would be a lie. The Devourers can only be stopped by humanity. No single species can. Chen stopped, glancing around the chamber at the gathered faces of beings from all over the galaxy. But together, we can do the impossible. We have the ingenuity of humanity, the tactical understanding of the Kovens, the manufacturing base of the Zelanti, the technological prowess of the ethereal collective, and the sheer bloody-mindedness of every race in this room, and we can create something that has never before existed, an actual, truly unified defense of the galaxy. Captain Chen, the representative from the Hexapod Consortium, interrupted. You mentioned togetherness, but what you're describing here is war. War on a level that will leave whole civilizations in flames. Representative, I'm proposing survival. The Devourers don't negotiate, they don't show mercy, they don't stop. War is going to happen like it or not. The only question is whether we meet that challenge together or divided. And if we refuse, asked another delegate, then you would go extinct but alone. But I doubt you will decline. I hope you fight, is what I think, because that's what sentient beings do when they are pushed to annihilation. We fight, we adapt, we survive. Captain, called the Koven representative, Commander Vexel, you talk of unity, but how can we place trust in one another when we have been enemies for ages? Commander, it's not something you have, it's something you build. We build it by struggling side to side, shedding blood together and defending each other when the darkness descends. Trust is built in the crucible of common pain. The argument raged for hours, but Chen could see the momentum shifting. Enemies for millennia were starting to look at each other differently. The prospect of extinction tends to focus priorities, and the speaker called for the vote. All those in favor of forming a single combined galactic defense force under shared command, thrust your limbs into the air. Holding her breath, Chen watched as hands, tentacles, crystals, and parts she had no word for rose throughout the chamber. After the count was complete, the vote was unanimous. The motion passes. The Galactic Defense Force is now in effect. Captain, you are considered Supreme Commander of this force by the Council. Chen rose to her feet, a mantle of responsibility heavy across her shoulders like a blanket of lead. I'll take that responsibility, but I have one condition. Name it, the speaker said. The Defense Force will honor the idea that each species, no matter how small or how weak, has something meaningful to contribute. It promises, once bitten, twice shy. We will not risk the lives of the minority for the majority. Either we will save everybody, or we will pass away together. Agreed, the speaker said. You know, Commander Chen, you have the entire Galactic Council behind. You use it wisely. When the session was over, Chen was swarmed with representatives from planets all over the galaxy. Some offered supplies, others offered ships, and some just wanted to shake hands with the human who had given them hope. Captain, as the crowd began to break up, Commander Vextel approached her. I have the coordinates to the first Forge World. When do we leave? We leave tomorrow, Commander. How long until we get to the Forge World? At most, 2 weeks at maximum jump speed. But Captain, there is something you should be aware of. So they created the Forge Worlds to test those who would use them. They will not just switch on because we want them to. What kind of test? Unknown. Each Forge World is different. But what the history claims the tests are actually meant for is to be a mechanism in determining whether or not the applicant species has the right stuff to fight the And what qualities are those? Bravery, imagination, and the refusal to ever give up, no matter how stark the odds. Chen smiled for the first time in so many days. Humanity will flourish, Commander. Ships from 17 species launched. From the Nexus station the next morning, the EU's Defiance was the flagship of the formation, followed by cruisers from Koven, crystal ships from the Zelanti civilization, and several that had never cooperated before. And as the haste fled into hyperspace, Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiance and gazed at the stars. The Devourers were on their way out there somewhere. Somewhere out there, the Forge Worlds beckoned. And there, out there somewhere, the destiny of the galaxy was waiting to be decided. We've got a signal from Earth Command. Captain, her tactical officer spoke up. We're receiving a broadcast from Earth Command. Put it through. Sarah, a voice rang out from Admiral Torres. I just wanted to wish you the best. The world is depending on you. There's no pressure, Chen said with a smile. Admiral, if we don't make it back, make sure the history books have it correct. Humans did not save the galaxy because we were the strongest or the smartest. We only got to keep it because we were too ornery to realize when we were licked. I'm going to ensure they do it correctly. Sarah, bring our people home will do, Admiral. Chen out. As the Defiance and its escort squadron sped towards the first Forge World, Chen contemplated the journey that had led to this point. And 3 months ago, she'd been a ship's captain with a straightforward mission: liberate the Zelanti and bloody the nose of the Koven fleet. And now she was supreme commander of a galactic planetary defense, desperate and furiously building an army that might be able to stave off a war. L. Smith. Tor.com. Kill some time between now and when we find out what happens next. The impossible had become routine, the mythical had become real, and so had humanity. Humanity had been just what the legends said, the species that made impossible odds inevitable victory. The Devourers were coming. They would, for the first time in the history of the galaxy, meet the opponents who are not one of 1,000 warring separate species fighting only for the survival of their people, but the first that fought as one for something larger than themselves. They would meet humanity and all the unfathomable things that went along with it.